I grew up at a family where I was always told I was the problem. Even when I did nothing, even when I stayed quiet, they said I was overreacting, that something was wrong with me. Then I accidentally overheard a conversation that exposed the truth. They knew they were breaking me, and they did it on purpose. I knew my place in my family from a very young age. Not out loud. No one ever said it directly, but I felt it in every conversation, in every look. If something broke, they asked me. If someone was angry, they looked at me. If the house felt tense, they said I brought the tension. I learned to be quieter, easier. I apologized before I even knew why. They said I was smart, so I should understand more than others, that I was strong, so I could handle it, that I wasn't as sensitive. I accepted it as truth. When my brother snapped, it was my fault for pushing him. When my mother cried, I was the reason she was exhausted. When my father went silent for weeks, I had disappointed him. I grew up believing my job was to smooth things over, to absorb the impact, to take the hit so everyone else could breathe. The strange part was that no one forced me. I trained myself. I thought this was what family meant. But something kept growing inside me. A feeling I couldn't name, like my role had been chosen long before I ever learned the rules of the game. I only started noticing it as an adult. After I moved away, but never really felt free. They didn't call often, but every conversation ended the same way. Someone was unhappy, someone was tired, and somehow it always became, "You're making things difficult again." Even from a distance, I was still the cause. I came home for holidays with my stomach already tight. Like I knew something would go wrong. And it always did. One awkward comment from my brother, and my mother shot me a look. My father sighed heavily. I felt the air in the room shift. Like everyone was waiting for me to mess up, or had already decided I had. I caught myself choosing my words too carefully, laughing not when it was funny, but when it felt safe. I was a grown man, yet in that house I became manageable again. Invisible, preemptively guilty. Once I tried to speak up. Calmly said I was being treated unfairly. Silence followed. Then my mother said softly, "See, we're walking on eggshells because of you again." That was the moment I realized. Any feeling I had in that house instantly became a problem. The shift didn't happen all at once. It started with small things that were impossible to argue with. Lost items. Other people's mistakes that somehow became mine. A broken mug. You were the last one in the kitchen. A missed payment. You said you'd check. I didn't even live there anymore, yet I was always involved. At first, I explained myself. Then I stopped. It was easier to agree than to fight. I noticed how my brother looked away when things went too far. My sister stayed quiet. They already knew the rules. I didn't. The strangest part was that no one yelled. No direct accusations. Everything came softly. Through disappointment. Through fatigue. Through quiet pressure. "You're not bad. You just failed again." I caught myself searching for my own fault before anyone spoke. Like a self-punishment switch had been installed inside me, and the more I noticed it, the stronger my anxiety grew. Because if I was wrong, then something was broken in me, and if I was right, then everything else collapsed. The real realization came from somewhere unexpected. An old friend who had known my family for years asked casually, "Have you ever thought they just made you the scapegoat?" I laughed. Too fast, too sharp. The words stuck in my head. Scapegoat. I drove home with that question and couldn't shake it. For the first time, I replayed the past differently. Childhood, teen years, every family crisis, illnesses, money problems, my parents' arguments. One detail kept repeating. At some point, the focus always shifted to me. My grades, my attitude, my personality. Like I was a convenient place to dump tension. The more I remembered, the clearer the pattern became. When the family struggled, I became the cause. When things calmed down, I was praised for improving. It wasn't chaos. It was a system. And that thought was genuinely terrifying. I started testing it. Not accusing anyone, just observing. At a family dinner, my father complained about work. My mother was tense. I stayed quiet. Just ate. And still, the conversation slowly turned to me. You seem distant. Are you upset again? I answered neutrally, said I was fine. My mother smiled, but it was cold. See? It's impossible to understand you. And in that moment, something inside me went calm. Because I had done nothing. Nothing at all. And I was still the problem. That was proof. Not loud. Not dramatic. But precise. I wasn't being punished for actions. I was being used as a role. A function. Someone had to carry the tension. And that someone was me. The realization didn't bring relief. It brought anger. Quiet. Cold. And for the first time in years, I stopped doubting myself. After that dinner, I changed how I acted. Not on the outside. Inside. I stopped explaining and started tracking. Dates. Phrases. Tone. Who turned the conversation toward me first? Who followed? The pattern became clear, fast. My mother planted doubt. My father sealed it with authority. My brother stayed silent. My sister pretended it wasn't her problem. It was coordinated. The most painful part was realizing it only worked when I resisted. The moment I agreed, the tension dropped. The family relaxed. I started experimenting. When they blamed me, I calmly said, okay. No emotion, no defense. And I saw it frustrate them. They didn't need someone guilty. They needed someone broken. When I didn't break, they pushed harder. Hints became direct. Questions turned sharp. That's when I knew. A real confrontation was coming. They wouldn't give up the role willingly. The climax started with a message. Short, emotionless. We need to talk. Everyone will be there. I knew what that meant. A family trial. It always worked the same way. The decision was already made, and I played the accused. I came prepared. Not with a speech, with clarity. Everyone was in the living room. My mother tense. My father cold. My brother avoided eye contact. My sister scrolled her phone. They didn't start right away. Silence first. Pressure through quiet. Then my mother said there was tension in the family again, and she looked straight at me. I didn't wait for accusations. I asked first, when did you decide I was responsible for your problems? The room went dead silent. The script broke. My father frowned. My mother tried to smile. We're just worried. But I saw fear. Because if I stopped playing my role, the whole structure collapsed. They tried to push the conversation back into familiar territory. Phrases like, you take everything too personally, and we just want to help you came fast. The gaslighting was obvious, but I didn't argue. I listed things, calmly, without blame, specific situations, exact phrases, dates. I watched their faces change. My brother went pale. My sister stopped scrolling. My father lost control and raised his voice for the first time that night. That mattered, because yelling meant lost authority. My mother said I was imagining everything. That's when I asked the final question. Why does everyone feel better when I'm the one at fault? No one answered. Just silence. Long, heavy. And in that silence, I realized something. Revenge didn't need to be loud. It had already happened. I took away the one thing they needed most, a convenient victim. After that meeting, the family went quiet. No messages, no calls. It looked like peace, but I knew better. They were regrouping. They never retreat. They wait for a mistake. I gave them one. Not on purpose. I stopped being convenient. I refused to visit that weekend. I refused to discuss family issues. I stopped explaining myself. The consequences came fast. My mother started complaining to relatives. My father said I was pulling away. My brother hinted I'd grown cold. My sister said my silence was hurting our mother. They rewrite reality, turned me into someone cruel, ungrateful, dangerous. That's when I realized something. I was still the scapegoat, just remotely, without my presence. And if I did nothing, they'd rewrite the story until I'd always been the problem. I couldn't allow that. I did something they didn't expect. I told the truth. Not all at once, carefully. One person at a time. No emotion. No request for support. Just facts. I started with the aunt my mother complained to the most. Then a cousin. Then someone whose opinion always carried weight in the family. I didn't ask them to believe me. I just spoke. The effect was immediate. Questions they once asked me were now asked of them. My mother called, irritated. My father said I was airing dirty laundry. My brother asked me not to escalate. My sister said, for the first time, that I was destroying everything. That was the moment of clarity. I wasn't destroying anything. I had simply stopped being silent. And it turned out their power relied entirely on silence. Without it, cracks formed fast. They weren't afraid of me anymore. They were afraid of what I might say next. The final conflict came unexpectedly. Not at home, not at a table. At a family event with everyone there. Smiles, hugs, the appearance of normal. That's where my father approached me and said quietly, almost calmly, "You've gone too far." It was a threat disguised as concern. I looked at him and realized something. They still thought they were in control, that they could push me back into my role. So I spoke out loud. Not loudly, just enough for others nearby to hear. "I'm done paying for other people's mistakes." The air shifted. People froze. My mother went pale. That was the end of the performance. Everything was exposed. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just walked away. And for the first time in my life, I left without guilt. Only emptiness. And a heavy, unfamiliar sense of relief. After that night, everything changed for good. My family stopped pretending nothing was wrong. They chose denial, acted like I didn't exist. I was removed from group chats. My name stopped being mentioned. Even photos from events were posted as if I hadn't been there. It hurt, but it didn't destroy me anymore. Because now I saw the mechanism. My role had always been simple. I was the container for their shame, mistakes, and fear. When things went wrong, it was my fault. When they felt bad, they blamed me. And when I stopped accepting that, the system broke. I started remembering my childhood. Small moments, words, tones. How I was always corrected, even when I was right. How my success was minimized and my mistakes magnified. It wasn't random. It was designed. And I was no longer part of it. The strangest part came later, when everything went quiet. No constant tension. No expectation of the next accusation. I started noticing how much space my family had taken up in my head. Their voices, their judgments, their looks. Even at a distance, they still lived inside me. I caught myself explaining things to no one, defending my choices to people who no longer listened. It felt like withdrawal. Freedom was painful, but that's when I realized something. I didn't need revenge. The most painful thing for them was that I stopped participating. I stopped reacting. I stopped proving myself. Their world was built around my response. Without it, they were left alone with themselves. And that scared them more than any accusation ever could. Because now there was no one left to blame, except themselves. A few months later, I got a message from my mother. Short, careful, no apology. She said everyone misses you, and that it was time to move forward. I read it several times, and I noticed what was missing. There was no accountability, no acknowledgement. Just an attempt to reset everything without changing anything underneath. In the past, I would have replied, softened, adjusted myself. But now I saw it clearly. Moving forward for them meant forgetting. For me, it meant remembering. I didn't respond. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but because I understood something. Contact without change is just a continuation of the same pain. And if I agreed, I'd become who I used to be again. The scapegoat. The one who carries what isn't his. I chose silence. And for the first time, it belonged to me. Looking back now, I realize I lost my family, but I also realize I never truly had one. I had a role, a function, a place to dump tension. Understanding that didn't bring happiness. It brought clarity. I started building a life without constantly seeking approval, without the fear of being rejected. And it was harder than I expected, because the emptiness they left behind felt like guilt for a long time. But slowly, it turned into space. For my choices, my boundaries, my voice. I'm not a hero. I'm not a victim. I'm just someone who stopped agreeing to be convenient. And maybe that was the one choice they never saw coming. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel, like it, and click on the bell so you don't miss any more stories. See you soon.